Hey everybody, Christopher here.
Hey guys, Noah here.
Have you watched the conclusion of our Madison Seminary series yet? And if
If you
not, why not?
if you haven't, I highly suggest that you go and do that right now, or at least in the near future before you watch this episode, because we're going to be completely recapping that series as we kind of always do once the whole series is out there. And I don't want to give out any spoilers, so if you're interested, please go watch that. Go watch that film series, and then come back to this, and you can kind of understand all the things we're going to talk about today.
I know that we went into our night there with some insight as to what was going to happen from the night before at OSR.
Right.
And when I reflect on what happened, what we knew about, and even what we didn't know about that came up, if somebody would have just told me, we're going to Madison Seminary, and my mind started to compile a list of things that I thought I might encounter or connect to, we didn't hit any of those. It's like
No.
everything that I associate that building with from all of my previous times there was no time to connect to any of it.
Right. And I think too, especially, and this is a huge point to kind of point out too, because we've talked previously about how, the film series that OSR, which, chronologically that took place the day before the Madison Seminary investigation. And whenever we talked about it, we were just basically saying what it is, and the fact that it is very much an ongoing story. What happens at OSR directly ends up leading into Madison. And I think after people watch that, they can more see what we mean by that. Like, we were very much led at OSR into what we needed to do at Madison, and the way that it all worked out and kind of coincided together is so strange. And that's why we've also said this. It's like whenever we come up to the Fairfield County Infirmary, that one is also just as intricately intertwined in that web or that story. And it's really interesting, I think, to kind of watch that unfold on screen.
Definitely. I keep replaying it in my mind and it still surprises me when I go through it.
Right. And it just ends up leading into really this whole can of worms that we're currently involved in. I think that OSR and Madison, and then so on and so forth, that's where it really starts to get interesting in the sense of we start to go down paths that I don't think anybody was expecting.
Right. Right. I
It's
know I wasn't.
You're right. It's so strange, and that's why it's almost like it's strange for us still. Like, I'm still kind of having hard times like wrapping my head around some of the things that have happened that stemmed directly from those investigations starting. So I think this is where things really start to kind of like heat up in a sense.
There were just so many little things too that came up that I either didn't think were relevant at the time and are now showing their relevance. Like when we mentioned Wildwood and Hinsdale
Right.
when we were at Madison. I mean, I hadn't thought anything of that since. That was 4 months ago. But I mean, what are the odds we just got back from there like a week ago? And now in rewatching that, it's like, oh yeah, that did come up 4 months ago.
Right. It's absolutely crazy. You're absolutely right. And I think we're gonna find a lot of that. I think as these film series keep coming out, I think we're gonna end up finding there were some things that were kind of woven in at some point that we kind of threw out just like because we didn't understand it at the time, and we're gonna look back at that and be like, oh,
Right.
that's what that meant. And who knows? There's probably even things in the future that are going to happen that we're going to end up looking back at some of this and being like, oh, that now I even have a different perspective on that. And I think that's what's interesting about paranormal investigating is the sense of it always seems like there's more than meets the eye with everything. Everything can be interpreted so many different ways, and you can look back at it and get a different message each time.
Right. It's interesting too, and I think about it, there were just so many places in the building that we didn't even get to that night.
Right.
'Cause we were so specifically directed where we were supposed to go. There's a
That
lot of
seems
the building we didn't cover.
Yeah, that also just seems to be something that happens to us a lot because whenever we get told there's something we need to do and we're following a specific storyline, that's kind of what ends up happening to us at a lot of locations, actually.
Right.
This series too was interesting for me too as an editor because and it's probably like I hope so, at least I hope some things are noticed and how I kind of switched up some of the formula a little bit too.
I definitely noticed. So I hope other people do. I think people will notice.
Right. Like I think the biggest change that I made that I think turned out great, and maybe that's a biased opinion, I don't know. I think it worked out. But it was the sense that I felt like before where whenever you would watch it and the first thing you'd see is the tarot card reading, which that's what I want either way, but it's like whenever you see that whole tarot card session, I almost feel like getting all of the information just right there and then getting into the investigation, and then you're not even seeing the tarot card reading in the other parts. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like it's in that first part, and then the other two parts don't even have it. You know what I mean? Or in this
Right.
case, the other part wouldn't have had it. And I'm like, oh, I don't think that's going to do that justice. I feel like you're going to end up forgetting some of the things that were said based off of that tarot card reading. So I was kind of like, ooh, what if instead I just basically clip the parts of the tarot card reading that basically directly involved whatever we were doing at the time. So like whenever you pull up a card and you talk about something, and it's like, oh, this is the part that was definitely referencing that card. That's the part that you're then going to see, and I kind of did it in that sort of sense, so that way you're directly seeing on screen what the tarot card said before the investigation ever took place, and then you're seeing the events that actually happened during the investigation. So I feel like that adds to the sense of like, how in the hell did the tarot card reading essentially play by play say what was going to happen? And I found that so cool to, I think, do it that way.
I agree. No, that was a good change. I love the way that played out.
Mhm. It's all just a big learning curve for me.
Right.
It's just a lot of things that I think I'm kind of learning on the go. I'm testing things out, and it is kind of cool to see the little bits of change and little bits of improvement that I think I have, little by little as each series comes out. And I think that's a cool thing for me, especially because it feels like I'm accomplishing something. I'm getting a little better each time. I still got a long way to go, but I think it is cool to kind of see these little bits of improvement as I go.
I agree. I definitely think other people notice it too.
I hope so. Anyway.
When we went to that room for the reading, I did not at all have in my mind that we'd be going back to that room later on.
Right.
That was a surprise to me throughout the night too.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I know when we ended up over there, I just wanted to be on the Civil War side. That was all me. But I had no idea we'd be going back to that room. It's like everything was just mapped out in front of us.
It kind of was. And it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see too, in the sense of like it kind of was. We were told what was going to happen and what we needed to do, and then to see us sort of realizing it in real time. I think that's always what's the most interesting to me, is kind of watching us sort of piece together what we were basically told we needed to do.
Right. Yeah, it's just so different from anything else I've done, just the way that unfolds. I'm still getting used to it, I guess, because it's just so unique.
It is very strange. It's back to the sense of like, in a way, having trouble sort of wrapping your head around what is happening, because I know for me it is a complete 180 of paranormal investing that I did before. the way in which it's done is just, or that we do it, is just so different. And I don't even really know exactly how to explain why or how or anything like that. It's almost kind of like you kind of just have to take my word for it and watch it as it unfolds through the different film series.
Right. I just got out of nowhere like this extreme burst of cold right across the front of me, like someone just went by. There's something in my house between that and what happened the other day with the wine bottle.
Oh, right. I remember you saying something about that.
For those that don't know about it, I was awakened in the middle of the night by this noise that sounded like someone was falling down the stairs. And a wine bottle that had been in the trash ended up rolling down the stairs.
Damn.
And now that cold that just went by, there's definitely something in my house. I might have to go and investigate later.
I mean, honestly,
it doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel negative in any way.
It just seems like it is somebody that's like trying to get your attention, which is interesting.
Right. I mean, I don't usually have loose spirits roaming around my house. You would think I would. You'd think there'd be hundreds of them here for various reasons, but there aren't. So this is different.
Right.
All right, back to the topic. Sorry about that. Just the cold burst, just like, what? What are we doing now?
Right.
So should we start at the beginning of episode 1 and kind of break down what happened and where we went?
Yeah, I think so. And I think especially for that first part, I think that's going to come a lot more from you. The work that you did in the cemetery, you're going to be able to explain a lot more in detail, like what that was, what we were doing. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you for that.
So when we were told that you had an issue that needed to be fixed, when we got that at OSR, my mind automatically started to go to the cemetery at Madison. And when I let the rods guide us to where we were supposed to go, I knew we were going to end up where we did. I knew we were going to end up right there at that stone, but I just wanted to actually see it come through. I wanted us to be guided that direction and not me pulling something through that I want to be.
Right.
So I don't think I've ever told the story behind that stone on one of our episodes. So I'm going to tell that story.
Yeah.
When I was there a couple years ago with a group of friends, it was myself and 3 other people in the cemetery. I looked around and one of my friends was over here and the other 2 were down at the other end. And then I looked down at that end again and I went, wait a minute. There are not 2 of them down there. I thought that was Dan and Christy down there. It's just Dan. And then I look over here and Christy's off this way. I'm like, what just happened? I saw her standing there with him. So I went down by him as he starts walking back. And I said, who was walking with you? And his eyes got huge. Like, what? There was someone walking with you. Show me what stone you were focusing on. And that's the stone he went to, the one we stood in front of and did the energy work.
Right.
When I looked at the dates on that stone and realized the stone belonged to a husband and wife, the husband had passed away, the wife had not. I then walked around and looked at the other side, and they have a picture of them on there. And the wife had a very similar build to my friend Christy. Similar build, similar hair color, similar hairstyle. And I realized that this woman went there so frequently to visit her husband that she left an energetic imprint of herself that was strong enough that I could pick it up.
Wow.
So the whole idea of, which by the way, for like 3 weeks, I kept checking obituaries out that way to make sure this woman didn't pass. I wasn't connecting to her ghost, but no, she was very much alive.
Right.
When we started to realize that it was your heart chakra that was blocked, I mean, the heart chakra being responsible for love and everything associated with that. I'm like, I want that energy to come from that stone and all the love that this woman put in going to visit her husband over and over again.
Right.
So the way I started things, even though we knew we needed to be focusing here for you, I wanted to check all the chakras, make sure they were all in good working order before we got started. And as we found out, your throat chakra was very, very open, very good working order.
My vocal chakra is very open, good working order.
As funny as I've always found that, I almost forgot of how it ran through my mind in the moment. Like there's a good long pause there before I say it, as I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to say this without sounding like an asshole?
I mean, it just is what it is. I mean,
Right.
I think it's just very obvious just with everything we do. Like, I don't know. I like to talk. I don't, let's just say what it is. I like to talk.
Right. And now that I've had a chance to really digest the whole series, obviously you needed to have that issue corrected no matter what. But seeing how the night ended with you actually having to do energy work.
Right.
I mean, it makes even more sense to me why that had to be done when it did.
Right. I think maybe an interesting thing to maybe point out or kind of talk about for a second too is maybe for anybody that's not quite understanding like what that even means necessarily, because like, so we were told that essentially that I had an issue with my heart chakra and the essence of love and stuff like that, and it's like I think we need to explain a little bit more behind like what that actually means or what that might actually do or something like that, because obviously it wasn't like, oh, whenever that's blocked you can't feel the feeling of love, because obviously, you know what I mean, like you have people in your life that you love, you still feel the feeling of love. So I figure maybe that's something to kind of like touch on to maybe help people understand what that means a little bit more.
Right. I think as it connected to you, what we needed to do was make sure that you're really able to feel the things you're meant to feel when you're connecting to someone where it's not so personal to you. I mean, it's one thing to feel for a friend or family member, someone you love and care about deeply,
Right.
versus someone you've never met, somebody who's not even here physically. But that to me seemed to be part of what needed to be done. You're meant to feel things very fully when you're connecting to these spirits that we're helping.
Right. And I think the part of the reason too that I think that needed to be explained in that manner is because I think that understanding what that means and why that works the way that it does, it's going to become very apparent here actually very soon, even in the next film series at Stark Saloon, where you're going to start to see where that's going to be used a little bit more, and I'm going to start to get more in tune with it.
Right.
So that's why I thought maybe that needed to be a little bit explained.
No, I'm glad you brought that up.
Trying to think what happened. What happened next after we went to the.
I think we do the reading after that?
We did the reading afterwards, and the reading is obviously kind of like split up amongst all the
Right.
parts. Trying to think of what we specifically did. This is the problem of like when you go on so many investigations and your head gets scrambled, and then also like with the editing too, I'm like, I can't remember
Right.
what part was.
I think after the reading, I mean, we went right away to what they call Sarah's room.
That's what it was, yeah. Because that was the first thing we were told we needed to do was I needed to close the door that I essentially unintentionally opened, and we had to clear the energy in that closet space. Not get rid of it, obviously, because that portal needed to be there for a purpose, but like we did need to kind of clear it of negative energy, so it did. And so yeah, that whole thing was interesting too, especially because it kind of starts to dive into, I think, things that are a little bit more out there for maybe some people. So yeah, let's kind of dive into that and talk about some of the stuff that happened there.
Well, I am going to throw it out there again, now that I'm talking about this more. That room that they call Sarah's room, I am absolutely certain that the spirit who's in that room, her name is not Sarah. That is not what her name was when she was alive. I do know what that name was. I connected to her very deeply, very strongly, and got some history. I'm still hanging on to that. I haven't put a lot of that out there yet.
It might be something that we revisit when we eventually go back there. Who knows?
Right. And I'll share this with you later. There's a location attached to her story that I've never been to.
Oh, okay.
That I very much want to go to.
Okay.
So we'll see how that plays out.
Right.
But I feel that so many people going there and referring to who's in there as Sarah helped to create something new. This energy that just was. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, but then people started having experiences in there and feeding it and turning it into something that seems to feed off of the more negative.
Well, I think it is very, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I fully agree with that. I think it is very much in the sense of you get what you put out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if you go in there and you're expecting negative, and that's where maybe you're kind of going in there and you're poking at things, you're prodding at things, that's what you're going to be met with. It's going to be that side of that entity where some people report going there not really having anything really happen, or you know what I mean? And I think that's because they didn't go in there with those intentions. I think that, and the word that we're kind of going to use is an egregore, which anybody agree, or the idea that it is a spiritual entity that isn't like a human spirit where it never had a physical body, but it was literally manifested and created out of emotions, intent, just literally a plethora of things that literally, you know, magically, spiritually, however you want to say that, created a intelligent spiritual entity that, you know, has its own now personality, way of thinking and stuff like that. And it's typically tied into whatever the intention was. So that's where it's like, for instance, like obviously we'll get a little bit more into this in a little bit too, but Vince, that whole entity was an egregore that was created from Steve's trauma. And because it was created from Steve's trauma, that's why it's nothing but negative and why it acts the way it does. It's almost like it wasn't even that spirit's fault. You know, so and so that's why it's like the egregore that I'm going to say is attached to Sarah's room. That's why that one is so interesting. And you know how a lot of paranormal investigators talk about the, like, they have like 5 different theories for like who that spirit is. I think what we were essentially picking up on is more of a possible, I'm not going to say an answer, I'm going to say a possible answer to what everybody's picking up on. It's the idea that this egregore, because it was literally created from confusion of nobody knowing really what that room was about, what to expect from it, and that's where it doesn't really know. So it just picks up on whatever you're picking up from. So in a way, it has kind of created a multi-personality thing to it. You know what I mean? Whenever you come in and you're expecting this personality, that's what you're going to be met with. And that's why it's so confusing, and why nobody's really been able to specifically settle on who that is in that room. And I think that's a little bit more of what's going on. It's an egregore that was essentially created out of confusion, and essentially does have a multi-personality coming from the confusion that stemmed around that room.
I want to throw this out there too, even though it wasn't part of the episode, but it happened to me there afterward.
Right.
I was back there a few weeks later, and I was sitting in that room with two friends of mine, one of which is very deeply connected to that building. And I decided to just throw down everything I've got on who's in that room and all the work I've done. And as we sat there, we heard this noise. It sounded like something metallic hit the floor. And we're looking around trying to figure out what it was. Nothing hit the floor. The mirror cracked.
Right. I remember you telling me about that.
As I talked about it and put everything out there, the mirror cracked. That to me was validation of what I was saying.
Yeah. I think even also a part of that, from what I remember you telling me, was that where the crack kind of originated, or like where you, whenever you kind of looked at the crack, where it kind of stemmed from, was right next to where I had put the symbol.
Correct.
Which I think is interesting. Which is kind of a part that we kind of need to dive into anyway, because that's the first. We end up using this a lot more, obviously. This becomes a very frequent thing that we do because we were informed how important symbols are and how much like spiritual power they actually hold. And so I use Nordic symbols. That's what I've kind of really based my symbolism behind and what I use. And I want to make sure that I put this out there, because I'm not saying that like, oh, only use Nordic symbolism, that's the most powerful. It's just what I have the most knowledge in. It's what I know what that symbol means. So that's what I use. And intention is most important when it comes to these things. So there's symbolism behind all these different pantheons, you know, that we've talked about before. There's symbolism in all of it. And it's all very powerful. And it's just more of you're connecting your spiritual energy and intent into that symbol. So that's what gives it the power. Now there is a even deeper level that we've been told about the symbol itself, and we kind of have some theories that I'm still working on. I don't know that I necessarily want to come out with some of my crazy theories quite yet, because I'm still kind of working on them. But nonetheless, we've been kind of informed that even a base layer, those symbols have meaning and power. Why? Still working on it. But there's the level of knowledge, energy, and intent that you put into that symbol, and that's, you know, you use that symbol. So me personally, I have the most knowledge in the Nordic symbolisms and using those binding runes. So that's what I use. But I just, in that moment, I kind of remember it was kind of weird, and I guess I just kind of have to chalk it up to intuition, in the sense of I just sat there and I was like thinking about what do we need to do, or what do I need to do to close this, you know, portal that I've essentially unintentionally opened. And all of a sudden it popped into my head. I need to draw a symbol and essentially work a little bit of energy into it. And that's what I did. And it seemed to have worked. Anyway, we were told that it worked. And I kind of have to believe that worked.
Right. I think that it did. Now, when I was back there again for MadCon just a few weeks ago, I didn't feel anything in that room. I spent a good 2 hours in there one night. I didn't feel anything in that room to make me feel like it didn't work.
Right.
I will say we had an incredible experience with the closet, though. 5 of us took turns going to sit in that closet, and we each had an entirely different experience. Like, some had a vision, some felt physical sensations, some went on a journey. I mean, it was wild.
Right.
So I have it in the back of my head that this is something I'd like to experiment with, not just there, but other places as well.
Right. And obviously this is something that's, you know, down the road too, is like we get to see on camera what you're kind of talking about with the experiment that we did with me in that. So
right.
So I think that's interesting in itself too.
Right. But I think what we did in that room worked. And
for the part of the clearing the closet, that's more of what you did. So I guess I can have you kind of explain a little bit more in depth of what you were doing in that moment.
I really was just using Reiki energy the same way I used it on you in the cemetery. Reiki is usually my go-to when it comes to clearing or really just about anything that needs to be done energetically, magically, spiritually. So I was just letting the energy run and feeling what was there. And as time was going on, I noticed, I'm not going to say the closet space, I'm going to say I was starting to feel lighter and lighter as it was going.
Right.
Because my first time in that closet, I stood, door closed, staring at the door, and it was like in my peripheral, the whole right side opened up. Like it suddenly became this long cavern, almost like a mine shaft.
Okay.
But then it felt like there was someone here. I could hear them. I could feel them. I could feel their breath. And I could tell just out of the peripheral, what was there was hideous.
Right.
It was hideous. And I wasn't going to look directly at it. I wasn't going to run out. I was just going to be.
Right.
So that energy is what was partially coming through when I was standing in there working.
Mhm. Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I think it's cool to like listen to that stuff too, because I think like me, I kind of get a front row seat when you talk about a lot of this stuff in the moment. You know, there's a lot of conversations that I now fully understand what you're talking about, but I think for other people, whenever they're seeing that for the first time on screen, it is interesting. You're kind of like that's a whole side. Like even before I met you, I had no knowledge or I wasn't even in that realm of paranormal investigating. So I think if there's anybody that was like me, that's where they're going to watch that and they're going to be like, the hell is that? So that's why I think it's important to kind of discuss that because for me, I've had enough conversations and kind of been taught enough at this point where I'm like, okay, I know exactly what this is and what we're doing. But I think for
Right.
anybody that was like me that was in the dark, they're probably just as interested as I was whenever we first kind of got into it.
And it seems too that almost all of the places we've been recently, I'd been to previously. So I have some experience going in, I have some sort of connection. And I realize that sometimes those connections come through in our videos and people might not know what the background there is.
Right. And that's why it's like I think there is something interesting about like this idea of a lot of the places that we've been and this storyline that's kind of unfolding in real time. It's almost like I want to say it like retracing steps. And
Right.
once we retrace steps, we're gonna be opened up to something way different than what we're doing right now in the sense of instead of like these locations that you're familiar with in the sense that you've been there, we're going to end up going to more and more places that we've never been, and I feel like it's going to get even more interesting than it is right now.
Right.
So I'm just excited for everything that comes in the future. But that pretty much I think kind of that sums up pretty much part one.
Right.
Part one didn't have as many like different things going on. It was more of just like that whole thing that happened in the room they call Sarah's room. That was really just the majority of what that episode was because there was so much that happened in that moment. There was a lot that we kind of had to work through and figure out because while we were told what we needed to do, we weren't told how we needed to do it. So we kind of had to work through that, and that's why that took so much longer than some of the other parts. So we lead into part two, and I think part two was really interesting, especially because like just the stuff that ends up happening.
Right.
So the first thing that happens, obviously, is we go to the Devil's Toy Box, and we connect with Vince, and you end up drawing Vince's appearance.
Right. Which I I don't know if it's I wasn't looking at the paper when I was drawing, I wasn't seeing the paper, I don't know what it was. But I just remember that moment of when it was done. I just throwing the paper on the floor or whatever I did, threw the pencil on the floor. It was just I can't even describe what I was feeling in that moment.
Right.
I cannot put a word with it.
because it's interesting because it's basically similar to your channeling, but it's different at the same time. It's very interesting.
Right. And normally when I do that consciously, just tell the kids, all right, go ahead. You want to draw a picture, draw with my hands.
Right.
Normally I close my eyes, but I'm very aware of what's happening. Like when I did this at Waverly, we connected to a young boy named Carl. And I'd asked him when he was done, sign your name. And with my eyes closed, I felt the C, I felt the A, I felt the letter R backward like a child would do. And I mean, that made me laugh. I was aware of it. I did not have the same awareness that night at Madison. So that was closer to channeling in that moment than I normally get when I do drawings.
I almost want to say, and again, this is literally purely my own thinking and like my own theory on what was going on, because it wasn't a full on channel. And I almost feel like the reason for that was because, we'll say, the powers that be, maybe spirit guides that were there helping with the situation, they know that if you channel Steve, you're going to channel Vince because Vince is connected to Steve, and that wouldn't have been productive at all.
Right.
So more, I almost feel like it was almost kind of like in your subconscious, like you were just literally in your subconscious seeing through Steve's eyes, but as yourself in your subconscious. It's a very strange statement. I don't even fully understand it myself, but that's almost kind of like how I'm going to say it, because it wasn't a full-on channel, but you weren't necessarily 100% there in that moment either.
Right.
It is strange. And the way that like that ended up coming up too was so interesting too, because we ended up talking about it in the episode where it's like he's got that messed up eye, and all of a sudden it brought right back to OSR. We were like, holy shit! Like I couldn't even put that into words, like what was going on. I'm like, what the hell,
Yeah, if that hadn't come through so organically the way it did, I would have completely forgotten about it.
Right. That was so strange. And it was crazy too, because I almost didn't even put that part in the OSR series because it was so sort of like, you know what I mean? Not even connected. But it was.
It was.
It was. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Oh, okay. Here we go. Here we go. But yeah, it was so strange, but so cool at the same time.
The whole experience surrounding Steve and Vince was strange. Just very different.
Right. And it's because I think, too, it does dive into what we were talking about earlier, in the sense of we ended up finding out, because I thought at first, whenever we were connecting to Vince, I thought Vince was a whole-on, like, human spirit. But he wasn't. He was an egregore. And looking back, it makes so much more sense now.
Right.
He wasn't. He was an egregore that was attached to Steve. And it was kind of like once that came up, it was like, oh, now it makes sense.
Right. That's why. I thought the same thing you did.
Right. I think anybody would. You know what I mean? And being in the moment, you would. Why would you just immediately think he's an egregore?
Right.
You know what I mean? But that obviously leads into, we go up to the asylum.
And I don't know what the hell happened that made me convinced that there was a bat above me when I jumped the way I did. I was 100% certain in the moment that I saw it, I heard it, something.
Yeah, I remember. When I looked back at that, I was like, yeah, there wasn't shit. There wasn't nothing there.
I saw something. I heard something, and I know it wasn't there, but something was fucking with me.
I mean, it probably was just Vince, to be honest.
Right.
If Vince is going to pick up on the idea that you're scared of bats, why not use that against you to stop you from what you're going to do?
Right. And I know that space is known to have them. Someone had just told me a day or two before that there was one up there.
Right. I think the asylum part is really interesting too, because that's kind of like, Is that the first time that we really see you actually channel a spirit? I don't. Have we seen that in another?
I did not really do that at OSR nor Bill Manor.
I don't think you did. So I think that was the first time, and like to see. And actually, what's funny is a behind the scenes like part of that. So I ended up having to increase like your volume, like whenever you were channeling Steve, to the max of what I could get it pretty much.
Right.
Not the max, but I had to increase it pretty heavily to like understand what you were saying. And even at that point, it still was kind of like he was talking so softly
Right.
that like I that's why I ended up even putting in the captions of what you were saying, because I was like, even with my headset on, I'm sitting there like almost like I'm in an Estes method, like trying to figure out what you were saying. And I was so glad that a lot of me repeated what you said,
Right.
because that helped me out a lot. I was like, oh, okay, now that I hear it now, okay, I hear what you're saying now. So I was like, let me add the captions in here. That'll help out. But yeah, that's a little fun fact for you on that one.
Yeah, there hadn't really been a need for me to do it at Bill Manor nor OSR.
No.
And I mean, usually when I do that, I'm very deliberate in it. I, one, have to feel good doing it. I'm not just going to let any spirit
Right.
utilize my meat suit that way.
It's not something that does happen in that manner a lot. A lot of the time when you channel a spirit is more in the Estes method, from
Right.
what people are gonna see in the upcoming film series. That in particular, it does happen, but it happens way more rare than than what you would do in the Estes method.
Right. It is not something I do that often. I mean, I've probably done it at FCI more than anywhere else, but that's where I've spent the most time.
Right. Right.
Oh, I will never forget coming out of a channeling where I was actually walking around during this channeling. We had to get
Oh,
someone
okay.
to a
Right.
specific spot. This was clearly someone who, when they were there, they must have hit their head on that attic chicken coop door over and over and over again. That day while channeling, he hit my head on that door. And in the moment, I knew nothing of it. When I came out of it, my first thing was, why the fuck does my head hurt?
That's
I mean,
crazy.
I don't hit my head on that door. I did it once and it was all me. And I've not done it since because it was awful.
Right. Right.
The way that happened at Madison, yes, I was in control of it in the sense of I knew I was going to do it, but still there was something different about it. It was just, to me, it just felt like, holy shit, here I go.
It was very much, and then like the moment you kind of got out of it, it was very foggy for you because you're like, what happened? You know, because
Right.
you dead ass like told me like, hey, like take the radio, I'm getting ready to go, and then you were just gone.
Watching it back in the video and seeing the way I just collapsed. I mean, clearly I had no control over that.
Right.
I couldn't have done that heavily if I tried.
Right.
That was pretty powerful.
Yeah. I I agree. But thankfully, you know, through talking through Steve's situation, we ended up, obviously finding out that Vince was an egregore that was simply just created through Steve's trauma while he was alive there. And we didn't really have to do much more other than really talk to Steve and like breaking away from Vince and understanding that, he's loved. There are people that care about him that don't think he's crazy. And, we were able to lead him back to that room where the tarot card session took place and connect him with the spirit that's in that room and allow him to start to heal himself. So there really
Right.
wasn't much more that we had to do for that necessarily. Um, but it was a really cool and powerful moment, and I think especially for me, started to, especially for things that are going to come up later, pointed me in the direction of how things get taken care of and how, you kind of have to be open to whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Get to keep an
Right.
open mind about all of it.
Right.
Which leads us into the final part, which for me, I think was probably the craziest out of the whole thing. Because, I mean, I'd done countless Estes methods before that. You know what I mean? I've done countless Estes methods before that, and I've had so many really, really great ones, but that there I think was really the turning of the tide for me as far as like what I've seen in an Estes method, because not only was I getting answers to things, but I was specifically told to do things. I was literally being instructed on how to perform energy work on Maddie, the haunted doll at Madison Seminary, and clear her of the negative energy that was surrounding her.
Right. When I watched that back, specifically the part where you were told to back up, that was really cool.
That was cool.
And I mean, for anybody, because the answers were so direct, for anybody that thinks we were faking that, I was blindfolded. How could I have known where you were in relation to Maddie?
Right. Well, and this is one of those things, and it's kind of like, this is also why I'd love for people to come out and, investigate with us, to see this stuff in person.
Right.
Because there is a level of, you can always say whatever you're going to say. Oh, you scripted that out, you had it planned out, you did whatever. And it kind of is what it is. I try to be as genuine as I can to try and show that, we're not faking this stuff, because we're not. Anybody that's been on an investigation with us, you can probably, just message our absolute number one fan, Kim Ashworth, to ask her, opinion about the matter, and she'll tell you straight up what she's experienced with us. But
Right.
that's why I want people to come out and kind of see this stuff in person, because it is wild. It changes your whole perspective on how you view paranormal investigating, the world, however you want to say that. It does change your view, because it changed mine. Like you can see me in real time, and I'm sitting there like going like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? Because even I'm confused. Like, I am literally being guided in what to do specifically. Like you said, like, I go up there, she's telling me put your hand on her shoulders, and I'm like, what? What are we talking about here? Like, what am I doing here? And it was so strange, so strange, but probably one of the coolest experiences that I think I've ever had, because it even opened up the door to the way that we do the Estes method now. And there's some things that I just can't wait to talk about. I just can't wait to talk about. But it's just later down the road, and there's a long journey that people kind of have to watch unfold before we can get to it. But it opens a door in a way in which I can't even explain how cool it is.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too. One thing I do want to throw out there a little bit more about what was going on with Maddie and why that needed to be done.
Right.
I think it was you when we got there that first said there was something about her that wasn't right.
Yeah, so I'll kind of explain that, because I know that part is not in the movie.
Right.
So I know that line there where I'm kind of like, maybe my feeling about you was wrong. That is sort of, unfortunately, where it's kind of like, if you don't know the story, you're probably going to be a little bit confused on it. And it's simply because just that stuff wasn't filmed. We weren't filming yet. But we ended up getting in the main room of Madison Seminary, where you kind of can, like, chill out, put your stuff, kind of do whatever. And we were sitting there setting up for the night, and that's where I'm looking over at Maddie, and I just got like this uneasy feeling. I didn't feel right about Maddie, and I'd said that several times to you about, like, there's just something about Maddie that I'm not really liking. There's something there, and I don't know. And I think that connects more into what you're going to talk about, so I'll kind of let you take it from there. But I wanted to point out, like, the reason that that's not in the movie is just simply because it wasn't filmed, but it's because it really just stemmed from the fact that there was something about Maddie that I just I wasn't feeling quite right about. And I think you're going to be able to give a little bit more backstory on maybe why that was.
Right. Well, it was really just 1 month before you and I were there that I was with Maddie at the House of Wills in Cleveland. It was when I investigated House of Wills with Twin Paranormal for their filming. We ended up not only bringing Maddie at their request because they'd met Maddie before,
Right.
but Maddie ended up having a very important role that night. Maddie was used to help get someone who was trapped and being tormented out of that house.
Right.
And I have no doubt that some of the energy around what happened to this woman, her name was Rose, the woman that we helped out of there, some of her story and just the horrible negative energy around that, there's no way some of that couldn't connect to Maddie. There's no way she wouldn't carry some of that with her.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that to me is so interesting because it's the idea that essentially we ended up in a way finishing something that happened for a video that, I didn't even have any involvement in. You know what I mean? I didn't have
Right.
involvement in that episode with Twin Paranormal. Now, I will say, I would like to meet those guys and possibly do a collaboration with them at some point. Be cool as hell. But I wasn't even a part of that episode. That was even it was after I think we started our thing, but it was still kind of in the very early stages of that whole thing. So we hadn't even really gotten situated with what we had going on. So I wasn't a part of that at all. And then
Right.
in our video, we ended up in a way kind of finishing something that stemmed from that. Like you can't write that stuff like that. That is so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, it wasn't on my mind at all. I mean, Maddie spent a week with me before I dropped her back off at the building. Actually, I think I ended up taking her to FCI first, and then from there she made her way back to Madison. But
Oh,
she was
right.
with me for a week, and it seemed like everything was okay. So I'm guessing that what was there, it's just the longer it sat, the heavier it got, the thicker it got.
Right. Right. That makes sense. But yeah, just that whole experience, just with literally not only being given answers during the Estes method, but literally being directly guided in what to do. I don't. That's an experience I don't think I'll ever forget. That was so cool.
That was a great night. I'm glad I finally got to see it.
Right?
You always tell me about these great things that happen while I'm unconscious,
Yeah.
while I'm
I
taking
think,
my nap.
and I think too. And again, there's not much we can say about this, but I think with some of the stuff that we've been doing recently, and the fact that it is going to be at times going to be able to be done on the other foot, I think is going to be cool, especially for you.
Right.
So
Oh, absolutely.
that is cool. But I do want to touch right before, like, because we're kind of at the ending point of kind of recapping what happened. I do want to throw this out real quick, because as always, I do the movie abruptly ends, because me, I like to lead into the next film series. You know what I mean? Like, so we were told very much that in that Estes method that we have some answers that we need to be told about the whole situation, and as I won't necessarily give out too much of a spoiler for it and stuff like that and what happens, I will say that the way it ends directly ties into our next investigation at the Stark Saloon. And we are essentially going to be following the story and understanding who my spirit guide Jane is. And we get told that whole thing, and those are the answers that essentially get answered. So that's kind of how the Madison film series directly ties into the next one. So I'm
Right.
really excited for people to see that. As far as an ETA on when that film is going to be out, stay tuned, because I'm actually getting ready to leave for vacation for a week, so I won't really be doing any editing this week. But as soon as I get back, I'm gonna I'm gonna hit editing really hard to get that film series out. So hopefully here within like 2 weeks we'll get that out.
I'm excited for this one because it's just so major.
It is. They all kind of. I think they just increasingly get more interesting. In my,
Right.
and maybe that's a biased opinion again, but I think they do. I just think the way in which, like, I think it's what adds to the interesting aspect of it is the fact that not only is the story thickening itself, but it's almost like kind of what we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that, like, we'll end up looking back at events or things that happened previously, and we're sitting there like, wow, how in the hell did that just connect to this?
Right.
So that's where it gets really interesting because, like, and that's why we say, and I really can't stress this enough, like, if you really want the full experience, you have to watch all the videos. You have to understand everything that happens because there are things that's going to happen later that if you don't understand what happened earlier, you're not going to quite get it. You're not going to understand what's going on. You have to watch each film series.
Right. Right, for sure.
I can't stress that enough.
No, they're very much connected.
Yeah.
And we're discovering even more so all the time, like those locations that were mentioned at Madison, how we just got back from there like 4 months later.
Right. Right. We definitely didn't know then how important that was, but looking back now, we're like, oh,
Right.
okay.
And at the time, I was going to be going out there different dates altogether. I mean, originally when I booked those locations, you weren't going to be going.
Yeah, no, I wasn't involved in that at all.
And then everything shifted. I had to move the dates and
I ended up being able to go.
right.
We go and we find out why.
Right.
So there's always a plan. The best advice I can give is just go with it. Just go with it.
That's about it.
But man, this was fun. I always like doing these little recaps because I think it's cool to kind of talk about the film series once it's out there and kind of recap what happened and kind of see from our eyes a little bit of what we were maybe thinking in the moment or what we were doing. And as always, if there's any sort of comments, questions, or anything like that, please leave those in the comment section. We really want to engage as much as we can with people. So please leave us comments, leave us questions. But that pretty much wraps it up for today, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.